You know that person who laughs at absolutely everything. The one who finds humor in situations that would send most people into a spiral. Yeah, they've probably been through some things. And I'm not talking about a bad haircut in middle school. I mean the kind of experiences that quietly rewire how someone sees the world. Let me give you a small example. Someone cuts them off in traffic. Most people react with frustration. But they're already 3 steps ahead, wondering if the driver is having the worst day of their life, going through a breakup, or racing somewhere important. Because when you've survived your own storms, other people's rain showers start to look different. Here's what people don't often realize about individuals who have endured too much. Their brain doesn't necessarily break. It adapts. Over time, it becomes incredibly skilled at navigating chaos. Not because life taught them gently, but because it didn't give them another option. Their nervous system becomes trained to scan situations quickly, to anticipate problems, to read emotional signal that other people completely miss. It's a survival system that once operated in crisis mode, learning how to function in a world where the original threat may no longer exist. And something interesting happens as a result. Many of these people develop a kind of strange resilience. Not immunity to pain, but immunity to being completely destroyed by it. They've already learned something most people hope never to discover. That survival is possible, even when things feel impossible. You might expect someone who has experienced too much hardship to become bitter, closed off, cynical, but often the opposite happens. Many become deeply empathetic, almost aggressively empathetic, because they've learned the language of pain so fluently. They notice the forced smile, the subtle shift in someone's tone, the moment when a conversation suddenly becomes quiet for a reason. While others hear silence, they hear meaning. They walk into a room and instinctively feel the emotional atmosphere. Where most people see furniture and conversation, they sense tension, comfort, exhaustion, or sadness. Their awareness becomes almost instinctive. This heightened perception often leads to something psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Research in trauma psychology shows that many people who endure difficult experiences don't simply return to who they were before. They grow in unexpected ways. Their relationships often become deeper. Their priorities become clearer. Small moments begin to carry enormous meaning. A quiet evening, a good conversation, even something simple like watching the sun set. Moments like that can feel surprisingly powerful. Because once you've seen how fragile life can be, ordinary peace starts to look extraordinary. But there's another side to this that people rarely talk about. The nervous system doesn't always forget what it learned, even long after danger has passed. This can show up as hypervigilance. The mind remains alert, scanning, prepared. Some people who have been through too much feel more comfortable sitting where they can see the door. They create backup plans for simple situations. They instinctively anticipate what could go wrong. To an outside observer, it might look like anxiety. But in reality, it's often a nervous system that once learned the hard way that safety cannot be assumed. Another interesting pattern appears in how these individuals talk about their past. They tend to minimize it. Oh, it wasn't that bad. Other people have had it worse. I'm fine. It's almost as if they've developed an allergy to the idea of being seen as victims. Because survival often required convincing themselves that they were okay. Admitting pain can feel like undoing the very mindset that helped them get through it. Relationships can also become complicated. People who have endured too much sometimes form extremely strong bonds with others. They can be fiercely loyal, the kind of person who shows up at 3 in the morning without hesitation. But when the focus turns to their own needs, things become more difficult. Vulnerability doesn't come naturally. Depending on someone else can feel unfamiliar, sometimes even unsafe. So they create a strange balance, craving connection, while simultaneously guarding themselves against it. It can make them seem independent, strong, or self-sufficient. But underneath that strength, there can also be a quiet loneliness. Because learning to rely only on yourself is powerful, but it also means carrying everything alone. Despite this, something remarkable often develops. Adaptability. When someone has already navigated significant challenges, change becomes less intimidating. New job, new city, unexpected disruptions. They've already experienced uncertainty before. Their nervous system knows it can survive instability. And then there's the humor. Dark humor especially. For many people who have faced difficult circumstances, humor becomes a powerful coping mechanism. It allows them to reclaim control over experiences that once felt overwhelming. Turning pain into a joke doesn't erase what happened, but it changes the relationship with it. Laughter becomes a small act of defiance, a way of saying that difficult experiences don't get to define everything. Interestingly, people who have been through too much often have an unusual relationship with control. They might obsess over tiny details in daily life, choosing the perfect coffee mug, planning the exact route somewhere. But at the same time, they can remain strangely calm about enormous uncertainties. Career changes, major life decisions, unexpected disruptions. Because somewhere along the way, they learned something important. The biggest forces in life are often outside of anyone's control. But small things still offer moments of stability. This creates a fascinating contradiction. They can be both extremely careful and surprisingly relaxed at the same time. Tough yet deeply sensitive. Guarded yet incredibly generous. Realistic about pain, yet still hopeful about life. But beneath all of these adaptations, there is often something quieter. A form of grief. Not necessarily the grief of losing someone, but the grief of losing a version of themselves. The version who trusted easily. The version who moved through life without constantly scanning the environment. The version who didn't feel the need to anticipate problems before they happened. Many people who have been through too much quietly miss that earlier self. The lighter one. The one who felt safer, even if they barely remember what that felt like. That grief doesn't destroy them. Instead, it shapes them. It often makes them more thoughtful, more observant, more intentional about who and what they allow into their lives. They begin to value peace in ways that others might overlook. They recognize the difference between safe people and unsafe ones. And over time, their experiences turn into something unexpected. Insight. Because surviving hardship forces a person to confront questions most people avoid. What actually matters? Who can be trusted? What kind of life is worth building? These are difficult questions, but people who have faced storms often become skilled at navigating them. Their strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about learning how to rebuild themselves again and again, sometimes differently each time. In that sense, their survival becomes something more than endurance. It becomes understanding, compassion, perspective, not because their lives were easy, but because they learned how to keep moving forward when things were anything but. And when you meet someone who seems strangely calm in chaos, someone who can laugh at difficult moments, someone who carries a quiet depth behind their humor, there's often a story behind that resilience. A story of storms survived, lessons learned, and a person who kept going when stopping might have been easier. And if that hit deeper than you expected, stay close to this kind of thinking, because once you start seeing people through this lens, you don't unsee it.